I will say is like one of the great partnerships that we have had is in some ways I think that we're working on both sides of the talent economy, if you will.
That's right.
Because WGU is so much about, and has been about, in some way activating all that talent that is universal, is everywhere,
yes,
and creating these pathways of education so that they can actually participate in a vibrant workforce and
yes,
a vibrant economy. And certainly all the work that you've been doing with SHRM, and you've been how long at SHRM now?
7 years.
7 years.
Eighth
So,
year now. Can you believe it? I was just trailed you because you were at 9, right?
Yeah, I'm just finishing at 9 in April, so starting the 10th year. It's phenomenal of how quickly I think some of the things have evolved. But
what you've done here. I mean, seriously, it's not just who's here. When you think about the ground that you've covered in just under a decade, like that's amazing.
Yeah. So I think one of the first things we were going to talk about is that as much as WGU has been kind of an innovator in kind of rethinking the models by which we can actually help individuals acquire their knowledge, skill, and ability to change their lives.
Yes.
You also have been looking from the workforce side and all that talent, all those humans that are incredibly talented and have amazing ways in which they contribute. But in some ways they face barriers or challenges. What are some of those things that you've seen in what we would probably call more conventional hiring practices, professional performance management practice, anything else? How have those historical things actually ended up creating barriers to some, or not making opportunities accessible to some as it would others?
Well, so you start with, there are a couple of things that just thematically have, and we've seen as barriers, to your point. If you go way, way back, there were barriers like your gender, your race, those sorts of things.
Right, very structural ones.
Right,
yeah.
And so we've made a lot of progress on those fronts.
Yeah.
Not all problems aren't solved, but there's been absolute progress. What we're seeing now, though, is different. First of all, there continues to be a bias toward the degree, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think we want our people to have degrees. That's the business that you're in, and we actually invite that because it says some institution says you have the minimum sort of skills to be able to do what we're hiring you to do. But in institutions like yours where people can work and get their degree at the same time, they're facing that barrier. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the ability to do something. So, at the end of it, and I like to describe what we do at SHRM and what our 340,000 members do every day, is our job is to find a human being who can do something. You are the manufacturer, if you will, in higher education. We are the consumer of whatever comes off of your manufacturing line. And to the extent what comes off of that line is a degree, but not a person who can do anything, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
The applied knowledge.
The applied knowledge. So in some ways, it's a barrier, but it's also a huge opportunity. And I know that's what you all excel in. But the point is, all of that, when you think about the real barriers that people are, they want to obtain that degree or that certification or that skill, and they don't know how to. It's either money, it's unaffordable, or time affordability. They just can't do it and raise their kid and do this and do that at the same time. So those are barriers that are impacting us in the workforce because we are ready to, as many cars as you can bring off that assembly line, we need to hire.
Yeah, it's interesting, like as you point out, is like one of the things you mentioned is like even if you have a degree, there still can even be bias further to that, which is it wasn't even just a bachelor's anywhere. I also wanted to see it come from this institution.
Oh my gosh, don't tell me. Huge barrier there. We still have that bias.
Yeah.
And from the highest levels of government, when people announce someone's going to get in this job and they read off and they're Harvard and they're Yale and they're Stanford, and we don't understand that when we do that as opposed to saying this person's just really good at their job. Now mind you, think about this. You talk about a barrier. So a person is appointed to a job. They have 30 years of experience. Oftentimes, instead of saying they've been here, there, and there, and here are their experiences, this is what they've done, we say they went to Harvard. That was 35 years ago. Who cares?
And that is a weird dynamic. That's a good example.
But that's one of the barriers, and it persists. It's like, and even what's fascinating to me is it's not just people like you who are graduates of those institutions. It's people who didn't graduate from those institutions at all who think that's the standard.
Right.
And it's a proxy for smart and a proxy for really smart. And that's problematic for us.
This also is something I often refer to as the delusion of meritocracy.
Yes.
This idea that somehow only certain individuals are worth it or have earned it.
That's right.
But those who actually talk about meritocracy, they act like not every individual can earn that.
Right.
And they don't actually want to talk about the affordances that those who have demonstrated that caliber of educational, capability or work capability, that they may have been afforded many things that have got to that point, but that doesn't mean that if you afforded another individual the same thing, that they wouldn't also get to that. Is there some of that meritocracy you also see in how organizations manage performance or try to develop talent and things like that?
You can only imagine. We see it every
Yeah.
day, and it does. It starts from the talent acquisition step, like to your point, the biases that we have built into, do you have a degree? What school did it come from? And then it gets to, what's your major in and how are your grades? I mean, things that in some ways kind of just don't. Why are you talking about a GPA of someone who finished school 30 years ago? Like, it's insane. And for years, some of our premier employers in this country prided themselves on saying things like, for every one job I have 5,000 applicants. I mean, they actually prided themselves on, fascinatingly, and they'd say, we want an inclusive environment. But I said, that's not inclusive. That's actually exclusionary. You actually want to make it difficult for people to do these jobs, and they don't factor in the people's varied experiences and how they all, some people have very, very interesting and circuitous paths to success that aren't oftentimes recognized or valued.
Yeah. I've certainly discovered more and more that of late there's a much more conversation about expanding access because of the growing, not just belief, but in fact truth of the opportunity actually expands when you have more people participating in it.
Yes.
So that access bias is actually starting to emerge. I like to see that, and it's great to even see institutions in higher education expanding, leveraging online modalities or figuring out ways to have integrated work-based learning models, et cetera, because what does it do? It is actually starting to expand the opportunity. It's expanding access. It's surfacing pathways by which individuals can now participate in a conventional one they couldn't participate in because it removes those barriers.
And we got 8 million jobs, so we don't have the luxury of not taking advantage of these opportunities. That's what's funny is the number of employers still who report like the biggest problem is I can't find the talent.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse because as much as I talked about 6 generations in the workforce, Americans, as you no doubt know, stopped having children in meaningful numbers. I understand you took care of that, at least for me, right?
I didn't. We have 6 children, 4 grandchildren. Like, we're excited about that.
But so thank you. But the point is, we simply, when you look at it, we're just great. Like, we have never seen replacement rates or replenishment rates like this in our country's history. So we actually don't have the luxury of not increasing and bringing more people in. So accessibility, funny that you mentioned that. For years, accessibility was really a civil rights argument. We want to create opportunities for people who were historically left out. Now, interestingly, business are saying, no, it may be a civil rights issue, but it's actually a very practical issue for us. We need people to do these jobs.
Your most valuable resource in advancing the mission and objectives of your organization are the humans that you employ. That believe in that mission are going to do that great work to advance it. It's like you need more of that. I would certainly expect, and you probably could confirm this, is like no employer expects to lower the standard for performance or the standards for competency for those roles. It's trying to figure out how to get more individuals to that level of competency that's needed in those roles.
And that's the challenge has been. And what we've seen is people have taken these terms, accessibility, some of these equity conversations, et cetera, and those are the new barriers. Because I look at you when you walk in and make certain assumptions about how you got here, what you know, did you earn it, and this, again, fallacy of meritocracy.
Let's actually use that as a pivot to this conversation about skills, because you hinted at it earlier, and after that we'll talk a little bit about the technology.
Yes.
You and I both know that data point. For all the declarations of moving to skills-based hiring, skills-based workforce, et cetera, I think the stat was only 1 in 700 open positions was actually hired on the basis of the skills in the kind of preceding 6 or 12 months or something like that. What do you see needing to happen within employers, within those people practices, that really starts the momentum shifting towards that skills-based model?
One, we've got to have some standard. Like, if for one person who says they have the skill, how do I know that's true? And I'm an HR professional focused on talent acquisition. The person comes in and says, I can do that, and I don't know that you can do it, and frankly, I don't have the time. And that's why relying on the degree has helped us, because it's a proxy for he or she is smart enough to do the work. So one, we need some way to say that is this person can do what they present themselves as being able to do. It's a huge barrier.
You have to know, you have to be able to verify the competency of the individual who professes to have that skill. If you can't, then there's no ability to actually reasonably assess
Right.
the readiness of a candidate for that if you don't have a standard. for the
And we on the HR side have to do that at scale. So
Right.
you just
Yeah.
have to be able
It's not
to.
one employer with their
No.
jobs like, oh no, you have to do it for those 8 million ones that you have to.
That's
you're
right.
like,
Can this person nurse for me? Like,
Right.
what, like, and I
Right.
need that. And if they're so that's number one. The other one is a lot of what you and I are doing, have been doing for several years now, is we've got to destigmatize it. Like that is a
Yeah.
real.
It's not an
problem.
alternate route.
It's not an alternate. Even that
It's the
use of
same
that
standard.
language
Yeah.
is alternate. Well, who wants the doctor
Yeah.
who has an alternate path to
Yeah.
becoming my physician, right? Not so much.
Yeah.
So we've got to destigmatize it. And related to that is give employers permission to do it. Again, it's a really interesting term. No one, when I have an engineering problem and I walk in with a group of consultants, I need to be able to say this person has the skills to do this job. Whether they're from a top tier school, whether they're from a mid-tier school, whether they don't have a degree at all.
Yeah.
They've earned this through some set of experiences,
Yeah.
but that someone can tell me this person can do the work and has a credential, whatever
Yeah.
that credential is.
Yeah, it's actually it's certainly possible. It's like WGU is kind of living proof of that simply because we used a competency-based model. It's like we actually don't even really care about how you learned and
Right.
demonstrated the proficiency. It's like we're just assessing your proficiency, and that is the standard by which you then advance through your courses and programs. You're a lawyer, right?
Right. I can admit it today.
Yeah. You know, there are 5 states that allow you to sit for the bar that you don't need a JD to
That's
sit
right.
for the bar.
That's right.
That's an example to me of skills-based certification. It's like, hey, you passed the bar, you're a
Right.
certified lawyer. You then become effectively employable into that profession. Like, there's a lot of licensure exams like that.
But I got to tell you, that's the American Bar Association, not to knock them, but the people who have gone through the 7 years of
Yeah.
post-baccalaureate, baccalaureate
They don't
for
wanna
football,
lower the bar.
They don't want to lower the bar.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of elitism. It's not
Yeah.
even, there's just like, I can't believe that it's okay to hire someone who hasn't gone through what
Yeah.
I've gone through. So that's a
That's a
major
challenge
barrier
that we have
right?
as humans, which is we want to know that the individual that's coming behind us has lived through the same thing that we've lived through.
The bias.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
The bias.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that as much as even WGU could advance skills-based credentialing, if you will, that if side by side a student and graduate at WGU has a course-based transcript and a skills-based transcript, as much as we do that, if the workforce hiring side is not utilizing those skills to actually map talent into their roles, it's not going to move anywhere. So, get your employers moving, would you?
Well, we've been saying increasingly, we've had a campaign around skills-based hiring.
Yeah.
Educating them on what skills-based hiring is, getting them comfortable that you're not taking risk, that it's not an alternative
Yeah.
path to legitimate talent, and then making it okay. When I use that term permission, it's okay to hire the
Yeah.
person who came through that route.
And so hiring managers no, you have to have the permission that says you're actually hiring talent from however it emerges because it's actually on the skills base and the proficiency against that. And that hiring manager is not knocked at all for
Right.
not hiring someone who didn't also go through this path, that looks like them, et cetera. Yeah, so that's a challenge.
And the people who are making the decisions, the people who are on boards, the CEOs, senior hiring managers, all came through the traditional
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
So their bias is just built in.
Yeah.
And it's hard. We have some data at SHRM that suggests that, to your point, when you put them side by side, this person who is the skills-based or competency and then the degree, without it, 8 out of 10 times, the degree wins.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes, even if you can prove that the person is better
Yeah.
through their experiences and the things they've done, there's still this bias toward the safety of the traditional
Yeah.
pathway.
That's part of, you highlight a little bit of, we won't go deep on this, but how I often like to show that the degree still affords the bearer of it optionality in a way that other routes to skills and competency don't. Because if you ever want to, if you will, shift or make a lateral move from one career track into a new career track, having a degree affords you that
that
possibility in a way that having a more career skills-based route doesn't afford you the same thing, because you don't have this mark that says, oh, your learning capacity is really what I'm hiring, your reasoning ability, problem solving, et cetera. But
Which actually leads me to a really interesting point. So what are we doing on the PK through 12 side to change that narrative as well? Because I think that's
Yeah.
part of the challenge
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. We actually, there was a really good, I think it was in Wall Street Journal just this past week, how they were talking about how KIPP schools.
Yes, I read that.
Did you read that
I
one?
saw
how,
that article.
How
Yes.
highlighted first, like they started with hey, this is all college track.
Everyone's got to be college.
And now it's like, actually we widen the opportunity spectrum as to like, oh no, college is one of many paths now that you can actually lead to a very vibrant life. Let's talk about the technology. We certainly know that we're living in a world that's going to be AI enabled. Just before that was mobile, just before that was internet. I think we're still very much in the internet age.
That's right.
But I'm even curious as to how you would talk about what does this mean for the workforce when you also include the over 55 that's going to be hired into that. The fastest growing new hires are over 75. But it doesn't mean that they aren't going to be utilizing technology in a totally different way. So what are some of the dynamics that you see in the workforce that's being shaped by the future technology dynamics that we're going to see?
So for the first time, employers, CEOs, CHROs have awakened and accepted that we're going to have to be in the education business. Back in the day, you and I would hear the term lifelong learning.
Yeah.
But that was, okay, you'll get to a point of retirement and you can...
It's more like a human would say, I'm a learner, I'm a lifelong learner.
Blah, blah, blah. Today, we're like, no, you need to be a lifelong learner. Because everything that you learned 3 years ago is likely going to be replaced. The jobs are either going to go away or be so meaningfully reconstituted that you've got to learn a new skill. And
now it's actually related specifically to the jobs you're going to be doing. It's like the lifelong learning, it now very much has a work-related purpose to it in a way that it didn't historically. The one-and-done model of a degree is not going to survive.
It won't survive, and so that's good news for you all. But it's really...
I'm not even certain they would all keep coming back to universities to do that. It's like, what are the other ways in which they may consume or acquire those new competencies that are needed for that loop?
Well, and maybe the university provides that in other ways as well, not just the traditional get your degree and leave. You become a student of X school forever because as you need to reskill, and that's the term right now that we are focused on.
The reskill.
Reskilling. You've got to reskill, upskill, cross-skill, but the point is no matter who you are and where you are, employers have finally accepted that we have got to invest in all of our employees. Back in the day, the idea was we only invested in our hypos, so the top 10%, the high potentials, we've got to invest in them to go back and get nice graduate degrees or skills or experiences. And now the point is, no, you've got to do that for everyone because the technology itself is constantly changing such that your star today won't be a star tomorrow if he or she doesn't. I get a question often that says, AI is going to take my job. Johnny, I mean, we get it often, the question, is AI going to take my job? And the response is no. Someone proficient in AI is going to take your job.
It's certainly going to accelerate the pace of change and things, but I think you're right. The clarification around is someone who is AI proficient, who's proficient in that technology, is going to be the one who's actually going to replace it.
That's your threat. And that's what so our challenge on our side of the world as employers is to embed into our cultures this notion that you must be constantly reskilling. Constantly doing it. There's just no such thing as I've earned my degree, I've proven that I'm competent at doing this, and now I'm good for 30 years, 40 years. That's done. Those days are gone.
Okay, the one other thing I think that is really important is these humans themselves. You know this better than I do because of the role that you have at SHRM and because of all those partners that you have across the workforce. How many professionals worldwide are part of SHRM?
340,000.
340,000, like huge influence. You certainly know that our humans today, we're stressed in 15 different ways, right?
Yes.
That shows up also in their engagement rates at work, their overall well-being, the rates of kind of loneliness and depression that may have been accelerated by the work modalities that individuals started experiencing over the last 5 years, et cetera. It doesn't seem to be improving. Like, what kind of messages would you have to say, what's important for those that are developing the new talent that's going into that, like at WGU, but what's actually the message for those that are the managers of these humans, the executives that are trying to develop the people practices to increase that sense of worth and purpose? What are some of the key things that you highlight here to increase overall well-being?
In the workplace, we are seeing such very, very high levels of stress because the missing empathy. And it's not just the empathy of your manager. It used to be that the data was 60% of people left their companies because of their managers, their people managers.
Yeah, that data still is true. We even see that at WGU.
That's right.
It's like your first order manager is always the one.
But increasingly, we're seeing the incivility of your colleagues is also another reason. Think about it, if your kid were in a K-12 school and great teachers, everything's wonderful except his colleagues or her colleagues were disrespectful, mean-spirited, etc. They want to transfer.
Yeah.
And so we are saying this idea of introducing empathy and civility to the workplace is key now
Yeah.
more than ever. We're as divided as we've ever been, yet we're as
Yeah.
diverse as we've ever been.
And separation and incivility at the place of work is like, well, we're just going to make it harder for us to actually, in a unified way, advance the purpose of the employer that we were working for, et cetera. But it's,
And we employers feel it. I can tell you now, when you bring all of that into the workforce with all of those extra issues,
Yeah.
it's bad. Here's another one, though. So I've talked about empathy, talked about civility, but here's one that you all could really help us with. And this is so back to the basics, right? Back to the future. It's financial wellness.
oh, okay.
It continues to be one of the, back in the day, we were taught how to balance a checkbook, how cash
Yeah.
worked, et cetera. But you have a generation that just transacts via their smartphone now. Like
Yeah.
there's not even, you don't have to pull out your credit card anymore.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, their association understanding of money or the scarcity of the concept, et cetera, is off.
Is
So
off.
you know it. People are making financial decisions that put a lot of stress on them when they have to
Yeah.
come to work. The idea that you buy what you want, you live where you want, you pay for an education that you probably couldn't afford, so you come in with hundreds of thousands of dollars of
Yeah.
debt for undergraduate degrees.
Yeah.
Scott, do you know that we're seeing people
Yeah.
arrive at our door with hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
of debt from an undergraduate degree?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, which is you can't have the cost of acquiring the credential that's in the workforce rising at twice the rate of inflation because their wages are not rising at twice the rate of inflation,
Can't.
right? And so if this is ever increasing its cost, but then I can't even afford that, and I only discover after the fact, by the way,
That's right.
they're like, it's an untenable proposition, and it's extended its impact, as you said, to being able to buy a home, to be able to actually even marry, like the cost of
That's right.
children.
That's right.
It's like it's led to a lot of strain. There's no doubt.
Works during the day for you for $80,000, $90,000 a year, a handsome salary, and then goes and drives Uber all night to service their debt.
Yeah.
So when they come to you the next morning, they're tired. There's
Yeah.
no way they can bring their best selves to work. So financial stress is something we're talking about a lot right
Interesting.
now, and it's a big part of it. So civility, empathy, and of course this idea that we've got to help our employees deal with, $10 eggs, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's
Yeah.
going on.
I'll just maybe end this part with this, as I'm just recalling what my wife has been learning from the service responsibilities that she has, et cetera, because it ties to your civility, to empathy. And she said the 4 principles they try to apply are really simply this. One is that you actually just extend kindness.
Kindness.
Like just start
Love
with
that
that. It's
word.
like the human is just like, that's the first thing. Second is you actually show and express appreciation. Like when's the
Fancy
last time, that says, I am grateful for the things you do and for who you are, and et cetera. The third one was respect.
Yes.
It says you respect their agency, their choices, et cetera. And the fourth one was really important, love.
Love.
It says, hey, I care
That
about
is
you.
so-
You matter to me. Like we want each other to be different, we're going to have to feel that from the other to say, hey, they want me to change. But
And
Anyway.
the workplace needs all of that. For
We
people
do.
who, might say, oh, that feels a little Pollyanna or, kumbaya, imagine taking a group of very different people, increasingly diverse workforce, and you bring them together and you don't have guiding principles like that. It creates chaos, and that's what we're seeing. People are
does.
at each other, they hold each other in contempt
Yeah.
because they don't embrace those 4 principles.
right.
So I love it.
Well, we could go on forever.
Yes, yes.
I'm pretty certain we could, but we'll probably have to end it there and let them.
Gotta go graduate 1,000
Yeah,
people, whatever.
exactly.
Just-
So,